everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. We have Dripta Pillai presenting a paper on understanding the language variations of rural classrooms. Dripta is a faculty at IIT Kharagpur, and she has told me that she would prefer to take the questions at the end of the talk, not during. Despite that, please feel free to type your questions as and when you have one in mind, and I'll bring them in at the end of the talk. Over to you, Dripta.
Thank you, Anakshi, and thank you everybody for joining me. So, as Anakshi pointed out, I'll prefer to take the questions at the end, but I'm sure we'll have questions and questions from different perspectives, because my presentation is going to be a very khichdi kind of presentation where I'll talk about little syntax, more social linguistics, and mostly language planning. And as you can see from the title, I'm talking about classrooms. And also there's a technical term from social linguistics, language variation. So I'll go through different areas and I'll switch very often. So if you have questions from any of these areas that I have just mentioned, please write it down and ask me at the end of the presentation. That will keep the flow continued. So when we talk about the idea of language variation in relation to classrooms, there are different perceptions about the idea of language variation. So you can think about the perception of policymakers. Here by policymakers, I'm trying to talk about the language in education policymakers. So the kind of issues that Shujoy mentioned in his talk, if you have attended his talk on the language policy, and perception of the variation by school teachers and elementary or primary level school teachers, so teachers who are associated with basic education, and also the perception of variation for a linguist. So the question that I'm positing at the very beginning of my presentation is, are there differences? So I would also like you to think about the perception and three different perceptions, whether the policymakers' idea of language variation is different from the idea of language variation in classroom. This is the beginning point where I want to draw your attention. So I work on rural classrooms and specifically to try to understand various things that are occurring inside the classroom, the teaching learning processes, the languages used by the children and the teacher, the communication that is taking place, and the incomprehensibility, the linguistic human rights issues, and curriculum related issues. So these are the 3 points which I think are very important in relation to a rural classroom, a typical rural classroom of India. You can of course find differences, but this is a very generalized kind of pattern that I often find. Number 1 is where all children have access to the regional standard and the lingua franca. So I'm sure many of the participants are in a practice of doing field work. So you can understand what I'm saying, right? So you can find schools where all children have access to the regional standard and the lingua franca. So I work in West Bengal primarily. So for me, regional standard is Bangla, and lingua franca is very interesting. There are different names for it, but I'm not concerned about the names. There are different lingua franca in different parts of West Bengal. And the second point is where children do have access to the lingua franca, but not the regional standard. So I'll tell you who are these children very briefly. And the third category is no children have access to either the lingua franca or the regional standard. So number 3 is probably little difficult to understand for some of you, but for my own work, I prefer to work in the third category area where children are located in extremely remote locations and they do not have access to either the regional standard or lingua franca. But the things are changing now for various reasons. So access to different variants. So I'll explain what we mean by variance later. Access to different variants occurred because of various reasons. So number one can be related to areas where either suburban or rural setup is does have a relation with some kind of exposure. So maybe that area is populated with tourists, though a village, but there are tourists visiting often. And also there can be a case where it's closer to a business hub. Number two can be related to a village or settlement which is closer to rural markets or huts, and children get opportunities to visit marketplaces or any other meeting places. So these are the categories which can be directly related to the children's access to different variants. So right now, let us say the regional standard, the lingua franca, and the home language, whatever it is. And the third category is actually the case where the children do not have access to any of the above. I mean, either the lingua franca or regional standard. These are the children who do not get opportunities to visit even a local market, which is, say, just 2 kilometers away from the village. So I have come across some children during my fieldwork, during my PhD, and after that. So this is the third category. So if you think about your social linguistics textbooks, this is for all of you just to brush up. And we did talk about certain factors which contribute to language variation. So these are the basic factors which all of us know, like age. You know that the aged members have restricted mobility and they tend to use home languages more often. So by saying different codes, I'm saying that they do not have much exposure. And if women of villages move out very frequently or regularly, maybe due to job or some other work, so you can see a difference between the variations of male and female population and social class in a typical classical Lebovian way. You can think about how language and social class differ. And stereotypes and attitudes also contribute to language variation really effectively, because negative stereotypes lead to restriction of certain codes, and also if there are negative attitudes towards some variety or some language, let me use the term variety throughout, that's better. So there's a restricted use as well. But apart from these categories which are mentioned in the textbook regularly, there are some more categories, more factors that contribute to language variation. One is access to basic education, whether the parents or siblings of a child have achieved basic literacy or access to basic education. Also access to higher education of parents and or siblings. And the last 2 points are extremely important, and all of you who are familiar with recent fieldwork, you know that access to internet. So access to internet, it is possible through a common household smartphone, individual smartphone shared by a few families, occasional access to internet through cyber cafes of local market. So these are all common usage of smartphones or internet. So Geo has changed the entire scenario. People are using internet more frequently than they did 5 years back, as I have understood. And also the access to television or radio channels. So soap operas are often viewed in urban languages and cartoon shows in regional standards. So news channel, reality shows, music shows in regional standards, and also advertisements in regional standards. These are also important inputs so that the particular linguistic varieties are exposed to the rural population. And ultimately, we are talking about children. So the idea of intra-speaker variation is something that I explored during my PhD, and where I work in the district of Jalpaiguri in northern Bengal. But the idea of intra-speaker variation is related to the fact that one child has access to multiple codes. And I'll briefly talk about what we mean by intra-speaker variation. But the kind of intra-speaker variation, like one child has access to multiple codes, is also found in some other districts of West Bengal, as I found after my PhD work. And these are the districts of Purulia, Malda, Alipurduar, West Medinipur, and Jharkhand, where I'm currently working. So the idea of intra-speaker variation can be understood, and some of you are already familiar with the idea of combinatorial variability introduced by Adger. And I'll very briefly talk about the model, and I'll not talk about the model in detail. So this is a kind of model which is a bridge between generative grammar and variation in social linguistics. And the model says that the variation in forms can arise due to combinatorial mechanism of discrete elements. So in other words, you can say that grammar itself is a variability is embedded in the grammar itself. So grammar includes the variability. And it is a new way of thinking about intrapersonal morphosyntactic variation. So the system predicts frequencies of variance where the idea of context is coming in the picture. So basically the kind of variation that we learned in Lebovian rule is getting a new avatar in this kind of a model. And there are, of course, other theories of variation, like variable rule Lebov 1972 and multiple grammars model by Anthony Kroc, who talked about different variants are getting replaced and they are changing in a constant rate. So it's a kind of a quantitative idea. And also parametric variation, which is talking about variation in the traditional idea of parameter. And in combinatorial variability, I'll very quickly talk about a few things which I think are important here to mention. One is that that a single unit can come in a variety of forms, and it is a non-deterministic variation where we are talking about the concept of variability, and variation in exponents and pool of variance. These are the two ideas which are important in Adger's theory. So there's a pool, and also lexical items are unstructured set of features. So you can think about set of features and you combine them and create different variants and you use them. So there's a common place where all the features are stored and you manipulate them and create new forms. And there are feature co-occurrence restrictions. So Adger 2014 elaborated it with the idea of this example where you take some function category X specified with features F, G, and H, and you take 3 vocabulary items, each of which matches one of these features. The syntax builds X, and X needs to be vocabularized. So any of B1, 2, 3, any of these can match, and X can be vocabularized. So this is the idea. And when I say pool of variance and the role of context is important, you can think about this example that for form A in context 1, form B in context 2, and in context 3 a different form. So contexts are actually leading you to produce different forms. So this is my favorite example from Rajbongshi, which is again taken from my PhD work, and I have used modified IPA here. So if you can see the red words, you can see that it's like progressive construction, all third person progressive constructions, and there are the 3 different forms. So number 1 is Rajbongshi, number 2 is Bangla, and the number 3 construction is neither Rajbongshi nor Bangla. So what I argued in my thesis is it can be termed as a new form. So this is the lingua franca. So this is something which I have found in my PhD, and here is some data from Mundari, which is like we're still yet to discover the pattern because it's quite difficult. So this is the IIT KGP Mundari team paper which is under review. I've taken these 2 examples. So the first example is from Mundari, which is agglutinative, and you can understand the pattern of verb Vibhotana. And interestingly, the lingua franca, which is termed as either Ghorua or Pulatia, which has a lot of components from both Oriya and Bangla, is the frame is Indo-Aryan. And we are yet to discover the features of Ghorua or Kulatia, but we do have some agreement data, and I haven't shared the agreement data in detail, but we have found that some interesting things are happening in the agreement, like dual number is disappearing, and it's like suddenly you can find dual, suddenly you cannot find dual, and also classifier is introduced in Austroasiatic. So there are some interesting things happening. But what is important in terms of variation is that children are using both Austroasiatic as home language, uh, one Indo-Aryan language as the regional standard or school textbook language, and something in between, which is often used by the teachers for explanation, which is again Indo-Aryan in frame, and the pattern of agreement in that language is influenced by the agglutinative language. I mean, so we are yet to explore it. And now let me talk about the concept of multilinguality from a purely social linguistic point of view. So far I was trying to talk about the idea of variation from a perspective which is a common perspective of social linguists and syntacticians. But if you talk about the concept of multilinguality, we find that people view multilinguality with the idea of different concepts. So you can say that simultaneous or sequential acquisition is happening of L1, L2, and L3. And as Agnihotri 2014 argued that multiple monolingual views can be opposed. So you have a dominant language and a target language, but you are saying that people are using different variations. You can say that no, people are actually using one multilingual form, one single multilingual form. And there's a similarity in the idea also. I mean, when you talk about in an Adjerian model, you talk about a common place which is generating different features and different forms. And when you are saying that it's one multilingual setup from which you can generate different codes, so it's somehow similar. And let me also talk about the idea of Kachru and Sridhar, where they are talking about asymmetric principle of multilingualism. So it is typically talking about the kind of hierarchy. So we know that though we're talking about multilingualism in Indian scenario in different areas, but there is definitely a idea of prestige. So higher prestige and lower prestige and restricted use. So that is something which is quite fascinating, and that is something which is contributing to the idea of multilinguality and giving it different dimensions. So what I'm trying to say in this talk is, what I'm trying to emphasize is that the idea of intra-speaker variation, which is used by people who are group who believe in bridge of generative syntax and social linguistics, and people in core social linguistics who are trying to talk about multilinguality or super diversity, which is the term is used by people like Blumiert and Rampton. I did not give the reference, so if you want me to talk about it, I'll talk about it later. So multilinguality, super diversity, or concepts like say translanguaging, which is also used by people who do a lot of work in multilingual education. So you can say that these are actually interdependent concepts. So these are not very different ideas. And what I am assuming is both the ideas can be clubbed together and viewed together, and they can be related to the use of multiple codes in classroom. So how the use of multiple codes are used in classroom, this is a debatable issue in India. And if you are familiar with literature where people in education and linguistics collaborate and do a lot of work, you know that this idea is a very, very common idea in this discourse, that multilingualism as a resource. So multilingualism as a resource of what? And multilingualism as a resource, how? These are the very important questions. So what I'm saying is that when you are thinking about multilingualism as a resource, or you can say language variation as a resource, you can think about fields like teacher training, developing materials for classroom use, and also shaping decisions for the language in education policies. So let us go back to the first slide where I talked about three different categories and expose the perception of language variation. So can we ask the question again by rephrasing? Are the teachers and policymakers familiar or aware of the potential variation of the rural classrooms? So if you think about the very simple examples of Rajbamshi and Mundari Kulatia that I have shared, so do the policymakers really know that there are such variations in a single classroom? There can be more complex variations, but let us think about those two examples. And what is the potential? I mean, so are they aware of it? So the answer can be both yes and no. So if the answer is yes, then the question is how to use the knowledge of variation for improving the quality of education. Because sometimes there is a thought and the thought has reflected in the creation of many language and education policies previously, that if you burden children with too many languages, it is a problem. So how to use the knowledge of variation for improving the quality of education? Improving is the core word. And if the answer is no, can it be conveyed to the concerned people for taking actions? So if people are not aware of such variations, which policymakers are often not aware, sometimes they are aware. So how can it be used? So what I'll do now is to talk about some language and education policies in Bengal. Bengal is important here because it was the capital of British India, and the idea of school and school education and language policies began before 1817. So formulation of colonial language policies began in British India, rather in Bengal, where East India Company officials learned both classical and vernacular languages. So this all debate of vernacularization and the conflict between Orientalists and Anglicists, many of you know that. And interestingly, the proficiency in local vernacular was prescribed by the rulers, which was not the case before the Britishers arrived in India. And the Calcutta School Book Society started producing textbooks in the regional standard. And that was something very important from a linguist's point of view, because it started homogenizing the language and it changed the entire educational scenario. Earlier it was a Pathshala system, it became a centralized school system. And the local governors started handling education policies from 1919. So Poromesh Acharya talked about universal and compulsory primary education, which was demanded in 1920s in Bengal. And we are jumping from the colonial policies to the more recent policies, because it is important for us to know what is happening now. So national policy on children and national policy on education, I think the second one was also mentioned by Shujoy. And mother tongue education was emphasized in these. And Datta Commission 1981 in Bengal recommended use of Nepali and Sautali as medium of instruction, and including two more important regional standards. But unfortunately, the language policies did not talk about the minority languages, any kind of minority languages. So DPAP 1999 talked about the use of minority languages or local languages. I'm not emphasizing any particular label like minority. I'm just generalizing. So, but it was discontinued. The program of 1999, it was discontinued for some unknown reason. And teacher training manual published in 2005. It's very important because 2005 is the year where the national curriculum framework is being designed at the central level, where the framework will talk about use of local languages in all the schools of the country. In the same year, a document from the government of West Bengal is saying that children should not speak inferior languages. So there is a problem. And National Curriculum Framework 2005, along with the National Curriculum Framework Teacher Education 2009, both emphasize the use of local languages. So I did not mention the recent policies, but let me tell you that there in 2016 there is a shift, and now the textbooks are being modified in West Bengal so that there are scopes for using local languages increasing. Now the use of language variation data for educational planning. So when I use the phrase educational planning, it's a big area. So several states are now trying to utilize language variation data for improving teacher education and curriculum development. And though West Bengal is not a part of it, but we do know that there are, or some of you are familiar with some extremely multilingual states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, Rajasthan, UP. All these states are trying to use the data of language variation or multilinguality to improve the quality of education. And what are the problems? And I'll tell you how this is. I'll give a small demo of how this can be done. And dropout for language incomprehensibility is very common across India. So people argue that there are socioeconomic reasons for which children drop out. But there are also cases where, because of the stigma related to languages, children drop out. Teachers saying some inferior words to the, or rather tagging inferior words with the children and pointing out to their linguistic behavior. So that is also increasing the dropout, and also bridging the gap of teacher-student interaction. So when I am saying teacher-student interaction, I can also break it in different parts. So if you have questions related to this, you can ask me at the end of it. So teacher-student interaction means how the teacher is talking, how the teacher is teaching, how the teacher is instructing, how the teacher and student are interacting inside the class, how they're interacting outside the class. So all these things are part of teacher-student interaction, and if there are gaps, and also discrimination in classroom that I just mentioned. So as I mentioned, a few states are taking care of the data of language variation and to improve the quality of education related issues. So one important tool for such changes is a basic sociolinguistic survey. So sociolinguistic survey is a term which is borrowed from linguists, but it's very widely used, and it's really interesting, where the various questions are recorded. So for example, as I have mentioned in this slide, language profile of a child, domain specific language usage. So if you're familiar with the UNESCO guidelines of language vitality, you know how people are concerned about domain specific language usage, and it's not confined to linguists only. People can also get some idea. The data will be noted down in IPA by the linguists, or with the mentoring. I mean, some linguists will be there in a role of a mentor. And also languages spoken at home with different family members, languages used at school domain, markets, nearby small towns, etc. So the entire language profile of the child. So these are being recorded as a part of social linguistic survey. Also the data of children's language use. So how to record data of children's language use? So I use a lot of picture stories while collecting data, and some of you were there in the IMLD 2015, so you know that what I mean by this. So picture, if you just show a picture to a child, and if the picture is very interesting, then the child will naturally use their form, the preferred form. So you can record it, or you can also show some other objects or videos, and recording of other narratives, like questions like talk about a village fair, or where did you travel last weekend, or something like that. What are the favorite plays? Plays mean the playtime rituals. So all these things are important sources of narratives. And also it's possible to collect parallel construction records of variation data. Now, what is very important from a methodological point of view is that if you are collecting the data as a linguist, you have a training in field linguistics, you know a number of things. So, for example, if the person is not using the mother tongue, rather using the lingua franca, you can easily understand that something is missing. Maybe you have done a background study that this is a Tibeto-Burman language and you are getting a different kind of construction. So you understand it's a lingua franca. If the teachers are being involved in social linguistic surveys, which is happening, so there is a need to guide them. And I remember during Shuja's presentation, Aisha was saying that more and more linguists need to be involved in these initiatives. And this is something which is exactly what Aisha meant. So linguists are actually mentoring them to create, not only linguists, also people in relevant areas like educationists who are interested in linguistics or trained in linguistics, psychologists who are also trained in linguistics. So they are mentoring the school teachers to collect this language profile data of children and also the raw data by using picture stories and other tools. So I have listed some major sources of variation which I think are important areas. So agreement is one area where it is possible to get lot in of course rural Indian context. So you get so I have come across languages. I can also give you examples where when one variation has person agreement, other has person and number. So I've also come across a case I just remember where the regional standard has only person agreement, but the home language has person number and gender agreement. So this is quite complex. And if you have some more complex issues like second person and addressee issues are more complicated, then the variants are more in number. And you also have ergative versus nominative constructions in like in one variation there is ergativity, in other variation there is no ergativity, and also different plural markers for different variants. So these are used alternately, and also preverbal versus postverbal negation. So these are just some examples to give you some idea that how one child has access to multiple codes, and these are different. So strategy is the very, very important word in terms of educational planning. You can say that, yes, multilinguality is an important resource. You can say that we do need to think about children's human rights related issues in schooling, in terms of schooling and minority languages. NCF said, Indian Constitution said that we need to emphasize the use of children's mother tongue in school, but designing of the strategy is not an easy task. So the basic social linguistic survey mentored by some linguists can be done, and the planning part is very important. How it is being done, there are different stages of it, and the collection of data based on the children's language use, I mean both vocabulary and sentence, and also the social linguistic background and domain specific use. These things can be collected through the social linguistic survey. And please remember that I'm talking about the school teachers and not the policymakers in this case, who can do this, I mean, who are actually doing this work for various states. And then a kind of generalization of data is being done through analysis, and creation of strategies based on the generalization of data is the third stage. For example, you can highlight that there are different agreements. You can incorporate examples of different agreement patterns in a single text. So now the question of text is arriving in the scenario. So yes, of course, we can have some kind of generalization of data, and we can think about using those generalization for educational planning. But how? So it is possible to use different examples. If there are two different patterns, it's possible to use two different patterns in classroom, in example. And also allowing elementary level children to freely use the variants of their own choice. So picture stories from a different perspective. Earlier I was talking about picture stories as a tool to collect data. Here I'm talking about picture stories as a classroom exercise, as a classroom task. So that is a tool, this is a task. And here you can show some pictures to, or rather picture stories to children and allow them to construct stories. So now if you can come across, or if you can check some textbooks of different state boards and textbooks of standard first or second, and if you can check the textbook of NCERT, SCERT Delhi, at least NCERT Bihar, I remember SCERT Bihar and SCERT Chhattisgarh, if you can check these textbooks from internet, you can see that all these incorporate some picture stories at the beginning level. So the target for putting a picture story as a classroom task is very, very conscious decision. So the picture story can help the children to construct sentences of their own choice. They can construct sentences by using their home varieties. I can see a lot of questions or something happening in the chat box, but I'm not looking at those because I'm just concentrating on the presentation, and I'll take all the questions.
No, it's just a data question. We can do that later.
Okay. Thank you much. Okay, so now I'll talk about the applications. So there are these two apps which are where I have worked and which are extremely important. And both the apps included the concept of language variation and used it for education. So the first box, which is the first screenshot, which is using Devanagari script, is from the teacher app. And the teacher app is a wonderful app for creating small teacher training courses for rural teachers. So teachers who do not have access to quality teacher training courses because they are remotely located, they can download the app from Play Store in Android, and they can download very easily downloadable courses. So this Bachon Ki Bhasha School versus Ghar is designed by me, and this is the course where I talked about the various ideas related to language variation. And if the teachers are participating or taking this course, they can also go to the dashboard and they can have their own discussion forum and discuss the classroom situation of their, or rather share their classroom situation with other teachers. So this is one use of the teacher training data in incorporating the idea of language variation. And the second screenshot, sorry, it's written in Bangla script, and this is just a demo app. We are still working on it from the IIT KGP Microsoft Research India project on Mundari language technology. So right now, me along with Bornini and one more faculty from the Center of Education Technology. So we are trying to work on it in a better way. And this is basically a game, language game. So we are trying to design some language games in Mundari for the children so that they can learn the language, home language in a different way. So these are the two examples. And now let me talk about the more nitty-gritties of using the variation data. So this is the kind of analysis that I was doing for some assignment, and you can see that there's a text in Hindi which I have taken, and there are 3 languages in one single classroom. So I haven't named the languages. Some of you can figure out the languages. So the same verb kaha in Hindi has different forms in language 1, 2, and 3. And what are the tasks? So analysis is one part, task is another part. So when you receive the result of analysis, you can, in this case, what I have suggested is inflections can be jumbled up and used for exercises, which is also my favorite exercise, which I have used in various worksheets in different areas. So you take different variations, which I remember during my PhD work, I did it. I created a worksheet with Tanmay sir to give it to the children, and it is like with Bangla Rajbongshi and the new form as I showed you in the slide. So all the forms were jumbled up. So ideally, you are putting the child in a space where all the known forms are available, which is not being done in the very traditional way. So this is also something which is giving a lot of freedom to the child. So ek is gute in one language, ego into other languages, and in the task what I have written is multilingual word cards can be prepared. So these are the real usage of multilingual data or other language variation data. So phonetic similarities can also be used to design listening tasks, and inflections can be used in different ways. So if you get different language variation data, and if you can design, if you can, after doing the analysis, if you can just put it in a chart like this, then you can, as a linguist, create or rather design different tasks for classroom use. So this is very useful. So I'm coming to the end of my presentation, and what I would like to ask you, and rather I would like you to think about it, is in two different ways. One is using the variation data for different purposes. This is purely from educational point of view. So you can of course create teacher training manuals, and I have given a link of my teacher manual which I created in 14-15 from Wipro Applying 13 Schools, Bangalore. So you can check the work that I did from this link. And also to develop textbooks and other reading materials, you can develop textbooks. So how it is done, some of you are familiar with it, but the chart that I have shown previously is one demo of how it can be done. And also to develop teaching aids. So training manual, textbooks and other reading material, and teaching aids, these are the three different parts of educational planning, and we as linguists have a lot of potential. So I'm really enthusiastic, or rather excited, that for next 3 years I'll be working on such a project from IIT KGP. So I'm just going to start the work where I'll be developing supplementary reading materials and teaching aids for 2 selected areas of West Bengal. And Aisha, are you saying something? Suddenly it's popping up.
No, she's not.
Okay. And the second part of the possible usage of variation data is to understand language variation theoretically and understand intra-speaker variation from various theoretical perspectives. So if you are going for a fieldwork to collect data for educational planning, the same data can be used for to understand language variation theoretically, to understand syntactic variation by using any models, or to understand factors of language change, to understand the nature and role of the linked languages. So this is something extremely rich because in one rural area I will find 2-3 different linked languages. These may or may not have names, and how the features are changing is really fascinating. So I've got 2-3 different linked languages in the area of Jharkhand where I'm working currently, and also to explore the idea of multilinguality from multiple perspectives. So this is something which I'm like emphasizing again and again, the multiple perspectives of multilinguality. It is on one hand language hierarchy, attitudes, and also restricted domain of use, but also how formal education contributes to language endangerment. So this is something also important from if you are working in the area of language endangerment. And so that's it. I don't think I have taken 45 minutes. I'm sorry, I was supposed to take.
No, that's perfectly fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tripta. You have a bunch of questions waiting already.
Yes.
So, if you go to the Mundari slide, Aisha had a question.
Yes, Aisha.
In the Mundari examples, the point was that the use of Indo-Aryan imperfective, right? What would have been the Austroasiatic native structure?
Okay. The slide means the
The
data
data.
slide. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let me. Yes, can you repeat the question, please?
Would you just switch on the slide sharing because it's too small, right?
Oh, yes.
The slide shows.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, can you see now?
Okay, yeah. In the
Yes.
Mundari examples, the point was the use of Indo-Aryan imperfective, right? What would have been the Austroasiatic native structure?
No, can I just
No.
come in?
This is Aisha. This is not Indo-Aryan. This is Austrasiatic. The number one
So what
example.
is the, if I can just ask Rita, what do these examples show us? I didn't understand what the problem, I mean, what
Okay, no.
do they show us?
No, these are just two examples of two different data. Number one is a data from which is a typical Austroasiatic structure, agglutinative, and number two is a sentence from the lingua franca. So I just wanted to show that number two is has a Indo-Aryan frame. Because we don't have much data, we are still working on it. So ideally, if I can have the Austroasiatic form of Mui Bhat counter, which is the lingua franca, it will have a structure like number one.
Okay. Yeah, because the second one had the imperfective, the kauta, that's
Yes.
the Indo-Aryan imperfective. So
Yes. No, these are not parallel, Aisha. These are not parallel. I was just trying to show the basic structure. That's
okay.
But we do have a list of agreements in the lingua franca where it is possible to see the parallel structures. So we are exploring it. I mean, this is
Fine. I just didn't understand what.
Sorry, I should also like put it in a more concrete.
The third convey is the imperfective in kauta.
No, this is to. So we don't know what is to doing here, and this is pretty interesting because in this variety, I mean the lingua franca, all the progressives are using t, and we haven't understood the role of t here, because it is and it's that is why the neighboring villages refer to this variety as kaiti kuiti bhasha. So everybody is saying t and ta, but maybe it is replacing cha, because we do have a full set of progressive constructions with cha, which is like common in Bangla Odia. But we don't know what ta is doing. We are about to explore that.
I mean, so isn't the analysis of the cha, anyway, this is just data, I'm just making a suggestion. So the cha is actually a version of the ta, where, or either way, the basis is the imperfective to signify progressive, no separate progressive light verb in Eastern Indo-Aryan. So that's why it was
no, there are light verbs.
No, for progressive.
For progressive. Yes, there is a chance. So we need to take care of that. So far we have we did an analysis of the Mundari, but the lingua franca needs to be analyzed. It's so complex. Three different variations even in the lingua franca. But Aisha, I have taken a note. We need to check this progressive.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. The next question is from Bhim Gautam, who says, I guess social linguistics survey is a broad term and there are lots of pros and cons. However, a sample survey of school teachers can be done based on the metadata information.
Yes, but if you can just come in and tell me what do you mean by the metadata information. So metadata information is also a broad term. So I mean, maybe you have something in your mind. Can you just put the question in a different way?
So I mean meta. Yes, I mean metadata information means the information, basic information about your informants, especially the teacher and the students, their age, their social, economical background, and other activities.
Yes. See, it is a like same thing. Social linguistic survey is definitely a very broad term, but what you are saying in metadata, uh, the same things are also being accounted for uh, in the social linguistic survey, because as I told you, one part of it is taking care of the domain specific usage, the language profile, and maybe I haven't listed all the social linguistic features. So when I say domain specific, there are more factors included in it. And so whatever you're saying in metadata, the subject, I mean the person, and the all the details of the speaker, these are taken care of. These are already included.
Okay. Does that satisfy you?
I mean that instead of using the term social linguistic survey, if you use another term for basic survey for the informants or the teacher,
see,
that would be better.
I am not using the term. It is standardly used by various language policy planners in India. So you can of course use any other term. The term doesn't matter. The what matters.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Tripta, next question is from Shujoy. He says, in the app script, choices made by whom?
Shujoy, I did not understand the question. Can you explain?
In the app script, who makes the choice?
In the app. Okay, app script. Who makes the choice?
Yes.
Okay. No, Shujoy. Are you talking about the IIT KGP app, or you are talking about the teacher app?
Yeah, that IIT KGP app.
Okay, that is just a demo. And the script, because Mundari Bani is a script which is used by the Mundari communities of Jharkhand, which is also shared by, because we are working in a village which has a border of both Jharkhand and Odisha.
You can show this.
Okay. So it is Bangla script, of course, and so Mundari Bani is not known by the elderly people. Students who are there is a parallel Sunday class on Mundari, which is organized with the help of some enthusiasts of the community who are getting books from Jharkhand and Odisha, specifically from Baripada, and running the center. So we have met some young girls who are very proficient in Mundari Bani. So you can say that Mundari Bani is also being used in Jharkhand. I think that is what you want to know. But it is not accessible to seniors. So that is why we wanted to use Bangla. And if you think that, this is a very crucial question, Shujoy. So if you want us to use both Bangla and Mundari Bani, do let us know. But I think from the user-friendly Bangla, it's not any kind of imperialism, okay? I'm aware of the encroachment.
One example from Santali. So if you see the Santali people, now they are much more interested to use Olchiki.
Are you sure?
Are
you sure? I don't
there are
think
people.
So.
There are people. I mean,
okay. If I have met school children.
No. Let me finish. See, I mean, this interest to use their own script in community is going to be increased in future.
Yes, I agree.
That I think. I mean, this is my assumption. I mean, or I think. So, if you use Mundari Bani, in future your app may be much more useful for the people who wants to even use Mundari Bani.
Yes, that is why we are exploring Mundari Bani. Okay. That is why we are exploring. But Shujoy, the problem with Olchiki is little different, because Olchiki is not student friendly. This is not me. I have friends who are Santali speakers, and they have told me. I've met children who says that it is a very complicated script. Let us write in Roman script. So there are complexities related to script. So we have no issues using Mundari Bani. We are also learning it.
No, I don't know the situation. You are the expert.
No. I am not expert in Mundari Bani, but we have to review the situation. For the time being, we want to use Bangla script.
Okay, so can I add something to that?
Yes, who is that?
Yeah, so is the Mundari Bani, is it in the Unicode or not? So if it's
is
not,
it Ritesh? Is it Ritesh?
Yes.
Yes. If it's not, then you cannot add that to the app.
I was just going to ask, is Ritesh there? And you appeared. Thank you. So yes, that is the problem. But it is widely being used at Jharkhand. So though the Sunday schools have very limited sources, but they are connected with a bigger network. So we have to explore. So we were planning to visit Ranchi to explore what is happening. And there's a discontinuity in my work, so I have to get back to all this. And I'll take a note of it. Thank you. I was just going to.
Yeah, no. So we'll have to move an application to the Unicode, and it will take time. So around a year, more than that, 2 years maybe. So to add it to the Unicode, and then only we could add that to the app. So that's it needs some some more efforts beyond.
True. We have no problems in that, and we can devote some more time and do this.
Yeah. Also, so not just time, but also
manpower.
some kind of lobbying and contacting the right kind of people.
Yes, absolutely true. Yes, thank you.
Tanmoy had a question that I'm not very clear on. Tanmoy, if you'd like to come in.
I didn't have any question.
Comment on imperfective and progressive.
There is no imperfective there. There is only progressive, and maybe there is animacy agreement. That was not a question, it was a response.
Okay, sir, are you talking about the Mundari data?
Mundari
data. I was just responding to Aisha saying that there is no imperfective there, which you confirmed actually. So it's okay, there is no question, go ahead.
Thank you. Our next question is from Anupama.
Feeble. Can you be a bit louder?
Is this better?
Yes, this is better.
Okay. Anupama asks, if the society itself feels that some varieties of a language or a language is subordinate to some other or inferior, then of course the parents themselves would discourage the child to speak the particular language. So does it make any change even if the teacher encourages the child to converse in that language? Shouldn't we first be talking to the parents, in turn the society, about the importance of a language, how language is an identity? Language has a lot of stories to share about one's identity.
See, this is an extremely important question, and there lies the challenge. Even the nature of mother is changing in villages. So if you go to different remote areas, you will see that the mothers are discouraging children to use the home variety. So it is a kind of encouragement that we can provide the children with different efforts. For example, the Mundari app that I was showing, when we started working on it, people were enthusiastic, and they said, okay, our language is being used in smartphones. So there are different examples of prestige, right? So if you can establish a kind of a platform with various efforts, this is not an easy task. This is not at all an easy task, but you can of course establish this with various examples. And for example, if a language is now documented by a team. So when I was working in Jadavpur, me and Bornini, we went to West Medinipur district, which is where I'm living actually, to document Koda language, which is another Austroasiatic language. So we knew that there's not much work has been done on this language, but I found a speaker here at IIT Kharagpur who is a staff. So he, when he knew that I'm working on Mundari, he came to meet me and he told me that, I speak Coda. This is not Mundari, but this is Coda. And Jadavpur University is working on my language. So he's proud of it. Now we have a Wikipedia page. So visibility is also increasing prestige. So now in the changing time, if you can assure some kind of a visibility and also to tell them that, tell the speakers that no, there is no stigma. So I teach a class in KGP, which is a kind of remedial class where students from different communities come. So they don't utter the name of their mother tongue, because there are constant stereotyping in this campus by some elite students. So if you can assure that it will provide with a kind of a platform where there is no stigma, then it is established. So if the parents are gradually aware of the fact that, okay, my language is also gaining some prestige through whatever app, or if you can go to Jharkhand initiatives, you'll see that there are downloadable competitive exam books in different minority languages, which is very interesting. So it is also increasing the prestige in a different way. So the perception can be changed in this way.
Anupama, does that answer your question? Okay, until she responds, Aisha has a comment on the app that we were talking about. Given that it's a teacher training app, do we not need to understand which scripts the teachers know?
Oh, Aisha, you know it better than me about the teacher app, because you are the person who introduced me to this group. So I asked this question to them. They said that initially they are using Devanagari script because it is being used in the northern India initially, but they are planning to include Marathi, I think, later, and some more regional languages. Scripts used in regional language. So this is a problem, So one more organization I know who are primarily working with various areas in northern India, they are also using Devanagari, and I cannot use those for West Bengal. So there's a problem, but you have to adopt something, some common script. Script is not a problem. So I don't know whether I answered your question, Aisha.
No, you did, but I'm just wondering, so for the IIT KGP app, is that, so you're looking at literates, right? So I was wondering whether people who are literate and, targeting the really old people unlikely to be using the app. So if one uses both, why are we limited to 2 scripts, right? So one of the things about scripts is, of course, they need to be promoted. And Manipur has had a pretty successful implementation of their own script. And that's basically scripts are forced out to populations, and then, everybody uses them. So why not, as you said, look at having maybe a trilingual. So if you need an interface of languages, presumably this should be easy. The issue is not so much script, I think, also as translation into another language. So even if right now you can't add, if there's no Unicode, you can't add, but do it in another language and make space for the possibility. These things can grow.
Yes.
But also, I think teachers, people who are speakers of the language would like to see it in their script. It builds prestige for script also.
Yes, of course. And specifically, the Manipur example is actually can be related to the Santali example, though the Santali movement started much before it. The implementation part. But yesterday I was talking to a friend who is Santali, who is a faculty in a university, and she still believes that it cannot be used. It's not user friendly. So
once you show it being used, it will be used. Gondi script is an amazing thing. Look how
it It is,
Yeah,
it is,
it has
it
got
is.
so much acceptability.
It
But
is.
because they've put it into the education system.
Yes,
If,
yes, yes.
as long as
Yes.
it's not put into the education system and those barriers are broken.
But also the user-friendly nature, because you know, Meiteilon was also used in education. So I remember how Hidam and Meiraba were struggling during IMLT presentation. They were calling their cousins in Manipur and asking them to read it, the texts. So it is, but you know, one thing I found in when I visited Imphal, that some newspapers use both the Bangla script and Meiteilon script together. So this is something which can be done. Maybe after 10 years or 20 years, Bangla script can be removed.
You need one generation of kids who've had exposure and one generation, and that generation is quite short.
Yes. Bondini, are you there? I don't know about it, but if Bondini is there, if you and Bondini system is creating some problem, so I know.
She's here.
Mhm,
Yes,
I am here.
Okay, so the suggestion that both Aisha and think about Mundari Bani. So if I forget, I think I will tell you.
Yes, yes, I have kept a note of that.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Hello. Yes. So the next question is from Yangchen. It's a follow-up. Are most teachers in rural classrooms multilingual as well? Because to use the multilingual tools, the picture tasks, etc., the instructor would need to be multilingual too, I suppose.
It is a very important question, Yangchen. So the idea is that this is the question which is asked by a number of people to me. And the idea is the kind of socio-linguistic survey that I was mentioning in the presentation is done to make the teachers understand that there is a multilinguality. The teacher can use the language which is accessible to him or her, but you are directing me to another problem, which is teacher recruitment. So certain states have a policy, education policy, where teachers from a same area can be recruited in the schools of that particular area. And unfortunately, West Bengal has a very, very problematic teacher recruitment policy, because I have come across cases where a teacher from Darjeeling has been recruited to Purulia, or teacher of Darjeeling has been recruited to Bankura. So Bankura and Purulia are areas which are predominantly Santali carries the prestige. In Darjeeling, Nepali carries the prestige. So what is happening, which is actually happening in higher secondary level schools, is that the geography teacher from Darjeeling is actually teaching English in Purulia, and the English teacher is teaching geography. So this is an actual incident that I have shared with you, which I met these teachers at a teacher workshop in Dinajpur. So this is what is very, very common in West Bengal. And we also, Sujoy, if you remember, we did a workshop in Jalpaiguri in Malbazar where both of us taught. So we found teachers who has Nepali as a mother tongue, teaching in Hindi medium schools, getting textbooks in Bangla, and similar examples. So textbook distribution, teacher recruitment, and selection of the medium of instruction in particular areas is very, very important. In tea garden areas throughout the North Bengal, in different districts of North Bengal, you find a chaos. Because in tea garden areas, Nepali and Sadri are the standard linked languages. But you find Bangla medium schools, Hindi medium schools. And we have actually found a teacher in the workshop, Shuja, if you remember, who is a Hindi speaker teaching in Bangla medium schools using Nepali as a medium. So this is problematic, Yangchen, and your question is related to all these policies. So until and unless we can change the policies in teacher recruitment, some states have excellent teacher recruitment policies like Odisha. So Odisha model, which is a model for many states, though there are debates about it, But it is very interesting to find the teacher recruitment policy of that model, because they are using more than 200 tribal languages, and it is, I'm not using the term tribal languages, it's the document using, and teachers from the same community are being recruited. So if you visit rural schools in West Bengal, you will find that the para teachers who are the Shiksha Mitras, they are actually recruited from the community. And the full-time teachers are coming from urban areas. So we'll find in many cases that the actual teaching learning is happening in the classes where the para teachers are teaching. Yangchen, could I give the answer?
Yangchen, any follow-up? I think she is satisfied. I have a question that actually relates very closely to, thank you for bringing up the teacher recruitment thing, because I was about to ask you about that. There are certain situations where I assume that the teachers and the students don't even have any language in common, or maybe just one language.
Yes,
and,
yes.
Of course, when we're talking about, okay, Yangchen is satisfied. So there are cases where we keep talking about how to preserve endangered languages, or languages that don't have standard variety status. Then we end up questioning the status of a standard language, and keep talking about how we need multilingual usage and variation in the classroom. But what happens in a situation like this in terms of the role of a standard language? Because we can't also diminish it if this is the situation.
Yes, of course, of course.
So how do you, where do you stand on that?
The answer is bridging. It's like bridging models are used in different countries, different multilingual countries. So if you can, there are two different things actually, Nakshi. One is that in first 2 years, if you give enough freedom to the children to use their own home variety in classroom, then there is also a kind of confidence that you create, and also it is going against the stereotyping that is constantly being done. And after that, you can actually bridge. So the regional standard, it is not the case that only the home languages are used and the regional standards is excluded. This is very important, because I have come across studies where, or I have come across people who try to argue that only the home language should be used. No, let the regional standard be a second language. That is my opinion. Let the second language, let the regional standard be a second language, or rather you introduce it in different ways by reviewing the situation of the particular state or the particular area, and then you bridge from the home language to the regional language after 3 or 4. So there are very interesting bridging models which can be adopted.
Okay, I'll have a follow-up offline.
Okay.
So you. We have one final question from Gargi. She says, did you come across incidents where learning the target language was promoted amongst the children using multilingual data in rural classrooms?
Can you repeat? There is some noise.
Did you come across incidents where learning the target language was promoted amongst the children using multilingual data in rural classrooms?
Yes, the answer is yes. So I have come across children, I worked with the teachers in various areas where they are using the multilingual data. And if you ask me how to do this, because you can put the question in a very different way. You can also put it in this way, that it is impossible to use multilingual instruction. It is impossible to use multilingual data in classroom for children. You can say this, but the question is how. So remember the kind of charts that I was showing during the presentation. There are a lot of efforts which are being given for rural education. The problem is that sometimes we don't give that kind of an effort, or we don't do that kind of planning. But if you are familiar with the efforts of Eklavya in Chhattisgarh, so you can simply go to Google and find the website of Eklavya Pitara, where they have textbooks as well in which are bilingual textbooks. And the textbooks that I named a series called Kushi Kushi. So where you can actually find tools like picture stories, which can be given to the children and they can construct their own sentences. So multilingual education in this way. Multilingual education doesn't always mean that instruction written in 6 languages. By giving an example of a multilingual task, I can talk about just a piece of paper and one story, and then you allow the children to construct multilingual text by themselves. Children will create it. Yes, we have done it.
Gargi, does that answer your question? Okay, yes. Drupta, thank you so much for such a lovely talk. And thank you everybody for attending the talk today. Our next talk is on, I'm sorry, our next talk is on Thursday at 2 p.m. It's by Sampada Deshpande, and the topic is Wait, where did you get this from? Evidentiality in Gujarati. So May 21st, 2 p.m. I hope to see all of you there. And Drupta, thank you for such a wonderful talk.
Thank you, everybody.
You've got a lot of compliments coming in.
I should see those. I am not opening the chat box.
I'll
Okay,
send
thank
you
you.
a transcript of the chat box. Thank you.
I have seen this.